And at that point, I felt like everyone around me was like, you should just work a few more years and get more experience. And I was like, I don't think I need 10 years of experience before I start a company. At some point, never, like, no one's going to teach you how to do that. And you're never going to learn how to do that, like being at an entry level job straight out of college. So there's not really any point of me just like continuing to work for other people. And I feel like I know exactly what I want to do. So those were probably my first steps.
Welcome to Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, the show that dares to bring no-nonsense insight to those who have the courage to start, grow, and scale a business. I'm your host, Susan Sly. Well, hey, what's up, Raw and Real Entrepreneurs? I hope you're having an amazing day. I am so excited to interview my guest today because we are going to go over how to go from idea to inception to get your business online. And even when you might have a lot of friends who are saying, you know what, I just want to work for someone else right now, it's more secure. How do you defy the odds and even imposter syndrome and get things going? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And before we do, a couple of quick announcements. Number one, I have a huge announcement. So this is going to be something you're going to want to watch me on Instagram at Susan Sly, on my Facebook fan page at Susan_Sly. I am announcing a massive brand collaboration that's coming up, so I can't tell you more about that. I also have a course coming out, Employee to Entrepreneur. So if you've ever wondered about how do you decide on your business idea, how do you deal with accounting and payment processing and get your idea out to the market, that is also coming up. So many things going on, but check out my guest today. She graduated in 2020. That's when my daughter Avery graduated. Talk about like unfulfilling COVID graduation. I lived through that, from University of Wisconsin-Madison, with a major in retail and consumer behavior, along with 2 minors in textile and fashion design and business. So she essentially went to school and studied what I had wanted to study if I didn't do a science degree. She then worked in fashion for 6 months before starting to work on her own brand. And she had worked for 5 years in the fashion industry. At that point, through her school years, she spent summers in LA, Wisconsin, New York, and London. Talk about a bit of a contrast there. And she's always had a vision to start her own business. And so she created this concept called All My Love, and it's been truly a dream come true. So my guest today is none other than Georgie Dorfman. Georgie, I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here.
Georgie, let's jump in. I want you to imagine, we've got people listening. My nephew is listening to the show and they're thinking, okay, I really want to start a business. It seems so daunting. I'd love to, especially someone who's super creative, I'd love to just get something out there. What were the first steps you took? So you had this idea, but 91% of people never take the idea and do anything with it, but you're in that 9%. What were your first steps?
Well, my first step was I wrote out a very, very long business plan. I literally Googled how to start a clothing company. And obviously so much comes up and everyone has like websites that they recommend and services. And then I actually bought a book. I think it's called How to Start a Clothing Company. And I read that too. I knew I had like a concept in high school. I mean, not in high school, in my senior year of college. And I remember calling my dad and just being like, I have an idea for a clothing brand. I really want to make like women's clothing for going out. But my biggest problem is that when I buy something that I really like, I wear it out, I take a bunch of pictures, and then I don't want to wear it again because everyone already saw it. So I want to implement like a few different buying options. Maybe you can rent something, maybe you can buy something that's been worn once for a discount, because basically I just thought about the like way that girls shop and wear their clothes and take pictures. And then also I was thinking about like, how can I make the most money on one product? And now it's like, now I have 3 ways of selling a product, and it kind of goes through a cycle. It's also more sustainable. So I talked to my dad and he referred me to a lawyer who I talked to. And basically my first step was meeting with the manufacturer downtown LA. I had them sign an NDA that I printed out from LegalZoom.com. And I talked about my idea, and he seemed to really like the designs, be excited about it. And he had already taken on a lot of brands, so he wasn't really looking to take on more, and that made me feel more confident. And at that point, I felt like everyone around me was like, you should just work a few more years and get more experience. And I was like, I don't think I need 10 years of experience before I start a company. At some point, never, like, no one's going to teach you how to do that, and you're never going to learn how to do that, like being at an entry level job straight out of college. So there's not really any point of me just like continuing to work for other people when I feel like I know exactly what I want to do. So those are probably my first steps.
Georgie, that's awesome. There's so much there. Like one of the things I love, it's like I wrote a business plan. Okay, so many people fail to plan. So you write a business plan and you consult, Google University, which is like, that's where we begin all things, right?
Mhm.
And then you're like, I'm going to go to an attorney, I'm going to get the NDAs going and creating that solid foundation. Now, your dad is so entrepreneurial, and there might be people listening. If you haven't heard my interview with Dr. Bill Dorfman, it's awesome. He's so amazing. But how did you learn these things? Because there are a lot of people who want to start businesses, but they're like, an NDA, what is that? Like, how did you learn all of that?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. The only people I know like my age who started companies, which is like very, very few, either partnered up with their parents or like had a lot of help from their parents. And my dad is very entrepreneurial. But when he started his company, that was like 30 years ago. It's nothing like it is now. The NDA situation he recommended to me, and he told me about LegalZoom. So that was him for sure. Everything else from there, though, was not him. I mean, he's always so supportive, and he definitely gives me like a lot of emotional advice throughout the process about like believing in myself, not second guessing myself, not giving up, like working hard. He like always tells me when he was starting off, he did not sleep. He worked all day, went to school at night. Like he just did not sleep for years. And so now I feel like I'm definitely living a similar life. Um, but yeah, no one really like taught me. There are definitely like a few people that I like look up to in the fashion industry that I've spoken to. But in terms of like people I hire and connections and agencies, that's all been like trial and error for me. So it's definitely been a little bit of a slower process, and sometimes it's exhausting and a little bit discouraging. But then once you like meet someone else through someone else and you find like good fits, it starts like all coming together. So I don't know. I think honestly, I got the most from Google.
Yeah, Lori Harder is a good friend of mine, and I'm full disclosure, I'm an investor in her company, Light Pink. And when she was on the show, Georgie, she was talking about like, if I don't know something, I just Google it. Like, and I think so many people of a certain generation, perhaps they don't do that, and then they sit there questioning. You don't need to. So okay, so you get your designs, they're ready to go, but now you've got to essentially create a virtual store. So what were the next steps you took?
Another thing I didn't mention was that my favorite brands, I looked up all of the founders of all my favorite brands that I wanted my brand not be the same as or similar to, but definitely like same kind of market and vibe. So I looked up all the people that started those brands, and I like followed them on Instagram. I watched all their stories, listen to all their podcasts, everything. And you'd be surprised how much how much information they give out. They say what marketing companies they work for, what PR, like, so I'm writing all this down. I'm like, okay, this company used this like agency. And so like that definitely helped me a lot. I definitely think that that's a good hack for anyone who's wanting to start a company and knows people in the same space. But yeah, so I had my designs, and basically I needed to then start a company. But you need a business license, you need a tax ID, seller's permit. There's a bunch of things you need, all of which I Googled. My dad did refer me to a lawyer, so I was able to ask him about what I needed. How did I start my website? I told my friends I wanted to start a website, and I asked them if they knew anyone. And I was talking to a couple people, but they were really bad at responding. It'd be like 3 days would go by, and I wouldn't get a response. And I was just like, I cannot start off working with people like this. So I ended up telling my friend Layla that I wanted to like build a website and if she knew anyone, which is so random because she doesn't work in this space at all and she's never started a website. I just kind of like put it out to everyone. And she typed in her sorority Facebook group saying, "My friend is looking for someone who can build a website for her. Do you guys know anyone?" Which is so smart. And I also, like, at this point, I wasn't in a sorority anymore because I dropped my sorority before I went abroad. So, like, I didn't have a group chat to type into. But a girl responded saying that she makes websites. So I started messaging her. Obviously, they're in college. Like, it's not going to be crazy expensive, which is great for me. And so she like built my website. And then now I have someone who I WhatsApp in Mexico. Her name's Tanya, and she's amazing. And she just like, I manage my whole website, but she, if I need something added and it's coding wise, she takes care of it. And it's been a really good match. I think we met through like a mutual friend who uses her too.
That's awesome. And did you use like a Shopify
Yeah,
store?
Shopify.
Hmm.
I would say for anyone starting off, like it's definitely the easiest platform. I do have some customizations to my website, so I couldn't do it myself. In the past, I have used Shopify at old jobs, and that's why I was like proficient in it. But there were customizations I had which required coding, and I could not do that.
Well, and I think it's so important that, one of the things I've always said in the thousands of entrepreneurs I've mentored is you don't necessarily have to do it, but you have to understand it. You have to understand it because when you're hiring people to do things, you can have people overcharge you or they build something you didn't quite want. And I love what you just said, Georgie. Like, I wasn't coding it, but I knew what I wanted. And Shopify is such a great way. I'm giving Shopify a shout out because I'm originally from Toronto. It's a great Canadian company. So yes, but it's such an easy, fast way to get your business up there, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
And I don't have a bunch of employees. So like I manage my Shopify. Like when you place an order, I'm fulfilling it. When you email customer service, I'm responding. When you email returns, I'm responding. Like I literally wear all hats. So like I'm very happy that I use Shopify. It was really easy. I know people like Wix too. I used to have like a little fashion blog and I used Wix, but I think for selling a product, I prefer Shopify.
So because, in 5 years, when you're like Sophia Amoruso, but doing all the things right. If for people who don't know, Sophia Amoruso started Nasty Gal, and I read her biography, and she made some mistakes later on, but did she ever create a revolution? Just in terms of women-led brands, business, online, doing things so differently. One of the things that I see for you, 5 years from now, when this is like a massive brand, and telling this story about I was the one handling customer service. I was the one doing the fulfillment. And let me ask you this. Do you ever have imposter syndrome? Like it's like, yes, I'm the creative, I'm the designer, I'm wearing all of these hats. Does it ever feel like, what the heck am I doing?
Like all the time. I remember I was in a meeting 2 days ago with an SEO company just to make myself like more searchable on Google, which is also really important for anyone starting a brand. And I remember in the meeting, I was like, it's a brand new company. I launched 5 months ago. Like it's, I don't have like, I don't have a crazy budget. So like whatever we can do to make me more searchable, but not charge me like $5,000 a month would be great. And I remember her saying, I really felt like she understood. And then I remember her saying something along the lines of, yeah, that's perfect. And you can pass this along to your assistant. And I was just like, I don't have an assistant. Like I just started. And I don't think people realize like what that means. And yeah, I mean, I get DMs all the time on my Shop on My Love Instagram from influencers who say stuff along the lines of, I would love to collab. Who can I contact? I'm literally in the DMs. I'm like, no, you can just like at me. You can just like DM me. Like, it's just so funny. Everyone's asking who to contact, but even though I have multiple emails and accounts, and it's all me. So it's definitely like funny when I see that kind of stuff, or when people are like, wow, your brand's so cool. Like, you have such a cool like marketing team, whatever. And I'm just like, no, it's me.
One
And
of the
sometimes it feels like
And it is. It's like, okay, but wearing all those hats is so important because you'll never hire well unless you've lived it. And my friend Andrea, she was like OG like me on the internet. So I had my first internet store in 95. She had her first one in 97, and really like made tens of millions of dollars, like in the t-shirt space. And she says this: when I hire people, they only have to be 90% as good as I am, because I've done every job and I know what it's like, and it's my brand and it's my standard. So as long as they can be 90% as good as I am, then I can be okay, right? Yeah. And I think I live by the same philosophy when I'm hiring people. And I use a lot of overseas VAs as well. I hire people from onlinejobs.ph. I have a white paper on my website. You can download how to hire, how to interview, and do all that stuff. But, at the end of the day, there's not one job in my company I haven't done. So let me ask you this. So, okay, now you got your merchandise, it's up, but you've got to drive people to your store. So what steps did you take to get out there and market?
Yeah, so that was definitely my biggest struggle. Obviously, like the first few days, I'm getting orders. It's my friends' friends, family. And I'm like, wow, I'm killing it. And then a couple months go by and it's slowing down. And so then I have to think about, like, why am I not getting sales? Like, not sales, but not as many as I want. And I remember, like, everything I put in is my money. So obviously I'm cutting corners everywhere I can. And I remember this is like a time when my dad helped me out. I called him like a month ago. Well, we talk every day, but we talked about this a month ago. And he was like, what do you feel like right now, if you had all the capital in the world, like what do you feel like right now would make you get a lot of sales? And I was like, I need to improve my SEO. I'm virtually unsearchable at this point, even though I have a Google Ads account. But I don't know if anyone knows this. Google Ads is so confusing and hard.
Oh, yes.
I'm very proficient in most things on my computer. I spend hours on Google Ads every day. I have different meetings with people from Google every day. It's so insane. And I'm still unsearchable. And I realized for months I'm putting in all this money into my ads, but like they're not translating into sales because it's not actually driving traffic to my website, because I actually shouldn't be managing my Google Ads. And I'm not doing it well enough that it's converting into sales or even people going to my website or the right people. So I basically said I need better SEO, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, search engine optimization. And I think I need a PR company, like to work with a PR company. I just, like a few weeks ago, partnered up with a marketing agency. And so they're doing influencer marketing for me, which has definitely taken off like a little bit of stress, just because like that's also something I handle, reaching out to influencers and whatever. It's just so much work. So it's nice that was like just one responsibility I could pass on. I mean, I still do a little bit, but they definitely take on the majority for me. And then I basically set up a bunch of meetings last week and kind of decided, like, if I'm spending money right now and I'm cutting corners, that money's essentially being wasted because it's not translating into sales. I rather put in more money that's actually going to make a difference instead of me wasting money for months. It's like less, if that makes sense. Like, it's like I'm not using my money smart. It's not like working the way I need it to. So I recently decided I need to invest more into certain things, and that will obviously pay off in the future instead of avoiding those things. And then a year goes by and I just have been like cutting corners and it hasn't led anywhere. So I think a big way to like drive traffic is definitely making sure all your SEO is taken care of and like optimized fully. And that, like, I mean, obviously marketing, there's Instagram ads, Facebook ads, you should be utilizing all of that. TikTok's an easy thing to do just because of the algorithm. If you post often enough, you're bound to at least get one viral video. Yeah. Also, I do TikTok ads. They're really cheap. It's literally like $5 for a day for the ones that I do. And it drives like a lot of traffic to my website, which is really cool. So there are definitely ways to get creative with it. I mean, I'm doing a podcast. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's just so many things that you can do. I'm trying to think of what else like drives traffic.
Well, I want to ask you, like, we'll talk about hashtags in a minute, but I want to just like, there was such a mic drop moment, Georgie, when you're like, I had to do the things I was avoiding. Mm-hmm. Right. And a lot of entrepreneurs, it doesn't matter, what stage of the game you're at, there's something that people are avoiding that they don't want to learn, whether it's like they don't want to learn sales, or they don't want to learn marketing, or they don't want to learn, innovation, or whatever the case is. But those things that we're avoiding, I love what you said. it's wasting time and it's wasting money and just jumping in there. And for a visual brand like yours, right? TikTok. So you mentioned like you'll get that one viral video. So my daughter, Avery, who I will introduce you to, she runs a digital agency and her clients they have very visual brands. So she has luxury automotive, restaurant, that kind of thing. And for one of her clients, the first video she did for them on TikTok, it got 500,000 organic views.
Wow.
And it's just that it's for someone listening to this and going, wait a minute, I got like 5 views. You have to understand there's some nuances to it. And the people who are the creatives, right? They know angles and attention spans and all of the things, how to tag things. And the big thing I want to throw in there is if you don't know and you want to understand and you Google and you start to look at some accounts that are getting a lot of traction in your vertical, hire a consultant. Like Georgie just hired a PR agency, hire someone, because as Georgie said, so I'm going to quote Georgie, if you're avoiding something, you're wasting time and money, which I love. Let's talk about hashtags. So you have very specific hashtags that you've chosen. A lot of people might not understand that hashtags are a way of having a search engine. So can you talk about the hashtags you've chosen and how you use hashtags when you're posting?
Yeah, so at first I was a little bit embarrassed to use hashtags because I was like, I don't want people to see this and think that I'm trying to get followers. But honestly, if you look at my feed, you can see when I first started posting, it was a few months ago. Like, obviously, I'm trying to get followers. It's a new brand. It's not anything to be ashamed of. I definitely like Google it, and there are TikTok accounts that like will tell you if you're having an Instagram and you're trying to get growth, these are the hashtags you should use and whatever. So I definitely like do my research. But there are ways to like ghost hashtags. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like you kind of like enter a bunch of times and it's like below your caption. So it doesn't show up right off the bat. You have to click like see more. So I definitely started doing that on TikTok. It's so important to use hashtags. I mean, on Instagram, it's important, but it's a little bit different. On TikTok, it's really important to use hashtags. And I just also noticed with TikTok, like even when I post like constantly on it, which I started doing more recently because I just like realized I need to, the growth is really steady. Honestly, every day I'm getting followers, completely organic. And it's just like, I think people don't want to follow an account that only posts once a month. So.
Yeah. And for me, where imposter syndrome shows up, like as a female tech CEO, I'm like, is this really that interesting what I'm doing? Or like, oh my gosh, I'm turning 50 this year. Like, how do I look in this photo or like whatever? And at the end of the day, the thing I've learned and I'm still embracing is that if you look at your social media service, that you're often serving your audience or your ideal followers by, like you said, being consistent. And a lot of female CEOs, like, again, my friend Lori Harder, like so many, like, oh my gosh, Emily Hochman, like, who's Forbes top 30 under 30 amazing women I've had on the show, that we all say we don't always feel like posting. That's one. And number two is that, it's like you just do it. It's like part of what you do every day. And so one of the things I did, Georgie, recently was I was like coming into this year, I was like, ugh, social media. And I have a team that deploys a bunch of content. I use similar hashtags across platforms because of my brand as a CEO woman in tech. And I had to shift the narrative on it. So I decided to call it create, because I'm very creative. So I looked at my social media as a creative outlet as opposed to a have to, and then it became a want to as opposed to a must, right? So it just shifted.
I definitely agree with that. Like like senior year of like, I don't know why I keep saying high school, college, right before I started, a year before I started my brand, I remember I was just never on Instagram. Like it doesn't always make me feel good, and I feel like I was just so much happier being present. And definitely throughout this journey, like I feel imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't want to post myself wearing my clothes. Like no one cares, everyone knows. But honestly, like it is part of the job. And like the people that I follow that have clothing brands, I love seeing their stories about like the struggles they had throughout the day, the meetings they had, what their everyday life looks like. I love seeing that kind of stuff. And I feel so weird posting because I'm like, why would anyone care what I'm doing? But honestly, like it is part of building a brand. Like I'm the face behind the brand. If the brand is not going to stand on its own. And it's just like kind of something you have to work through because at the end of the day, no one's going to feel like loyalty or connection to a brand that doesn't have a face.
Mm-hmm. And all of the studies are showing that. And celebrities have become entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs have become celebrities. So who's at the helm of some of the brands you follow?
I follow Danielle Guizio. So her brand is the same as her name. I remember this brand Boys Lie. I followed like the owners of that, and they definitely talked about their work days every day, and they had a lot of helpful advice. I remember reaching out to their marketing agency that they said that they used, and they referred me to another one because they had already like had too many brands and weren't taking on more. And now I'm working with that marketing agency. So like that's how I found my marketing agency, which was really helpful. There's a brand Set Active. I know the owner Lindsay through my dad, and I follow her, and everything that she posts is really interesting. It's not so much like, I mean, some advice, but it's also just interesting seeing how she balances everything. And it's just like a few brands like that. Like, not, they're very successful brands. It's not like, like Gucci or Prada, but it's like really, really cool, trendy brands that do very well and that like I aspire to be like.
I love that. And they're like, you have shared so many key things, and it doesn't matter what business someone's in. It's like you've got to decide, who's in your space that's doing what you want to be doing. Follow them, learn about them. If they say read a book, read the book, listen to podcasts, all of those things. And before I ask you, for your final piece of advice, as you're sharing, I had the privilege to get to know Donna Karen, and Donna, of course, built like one of the most successful female-led brands in our history, and long before social media. And Donna and we were at this juice fasting retreat, Georgie, in Palm Springs. And I'm watching her, and she's supposed to be relaxing, and she's like draping her assistant, and she's like, this was for her Urban Zen brand, and she's like doing all this stuff. And one of the gals walks by and goes, she never stops. And I was sitting with her. We decided to do something crazy and sit in this infrared sauna for 6 hours. Okay. And we're slathering ourselves with coconut oil, so we'll sweat more. So I spend 6 hours in the sauna with Donna, and it's like getting this life lesson. And one of the biggest things that I'll say, and just share with you, because she built such an iconic brand, was that every single breath she took, everything she did was all about the vision for that brand, which for her was the elegant simplicity for women. And where she had her breakout was the 5 pieces that, could be worn in all these different ways for the woman that no one was serving at that time, that, that young professional woman who was traveling. And so I know you're building an iconic brand, and you so get it, which is awesome. So I want to, regardless of someone's age, they're sitting there going, I want to start a business. What advice would you give to someone who's like really struggling with getting started?
My biggest advice would be to just like prepare yourself. First of all, like I still have a part-time job on the side. It's nice to have that stability moving into starting your business, and obviously eventually the goal is that you take that on full time, but definitely like weigh out your options and see how you can make sure that you have a plan B and something to just like give you some structure and stability throughout. And also just know that you're not going to have the same schedules as everyone else around you. You're going to be working a lot harder. And I don't think that people realize how much goes into it, but it's not a 9 to 5. It's an all day, all night. Anytime. I will literally wake up sometimes at like 3 in the morning. I'm like, oh my God, it's so important that I do this. And then I end up doing that for hours. And I have a part-time job, but I wake up a few hours before and then I work all night after, and it's never off. Like if you're running a brand, it's your brand, it's your responsibility. If I don't do anything, it's just not running. Like, so it's definitely an all day, all night kind of situation. And if you are someone who's really good at time management and you're motivated and you're willing to put in the work, I think that anyone can succeed. I think the biggest thing is just sticking with it. It's easy to do it for a few months and say, well, I haven't reached my goal and it's a lot of work. I think I'm just going to go back to whatever, a corporate job or working for someone else. But it's never going to succeed if you give up. So you just have to work as hard as you can and smart. Don't just work too much doing the wrong things. Be open to hiring people and getting help. And it's all worth it in the end. Like the investment is worth it in the end. If someone can do something that you can't do, you should definitely be open to letting people help you, but just know that it's a lot more than people expect, I think.
Yeah, so wise. I can't wait for your book to come out and like all of it. Well, let's send people to your site and your social. So I've got it all here. So you want to go to shopallmylove.com and you want to shop. Okay, so that's the first thing.
Yeah, you need to shop if you go to shopallmylove.com.
Yes, exactly. And then on Instagram, it's super easy. It's at Georgie Dorfman. And then TikTok at Shop All My Love and Facebook.com Shop All My Love. And on Instagram, Shop All My Love. So Georgie, thank you so much for being here. And Georgie and I would love, if this has been a helpful episode to you, tag us both on social, share it with everyone you care about. We would love a great review because really and truly, like the message of raw and real entrepreneurship is to bring to light entrepreneurs like Georgie who are not afraid to hold back, tell it like it is, and to give you that encouragement to go out there and become an amazing entrepreneur. So with that, Georgie, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice meeting you and talking to you.
Well, thank you. All right, entrepreneurs, you go out there, rock your day. God bless. And I will see you in the next episode of Raw and Real Entrepreneurship.